Yeah, thanks for the invitation, and let me begin with apologizing. I'm somewhat not unique, but very unusual kind of journal editor for a US and UK-based journal. I'm non-native speaker. And I only yesterday came to New Orleans, so I haven't had much time to get used to American English again. So sorry if I do mistakes, you will survive. I hope so. And it tells you at the same time a bit of story about the journal. The Journal of Curriculum Studies is cross-disciplinary and international. And we try to underline both aspects. Basically, we publish all work which is relevant for curriculum studies in the broadest sense, from the inner works of schooling, policy making, teacher education, whatever has an impact on what actually goes on in classrooms and schools and schooling. So we are very open-minded for all kinds of stuff. But the one thing which is important for our journal, and which makes more or less the core of the identity of JCS now for 40 plus years, is we want to be international. So if you submitted a paper, I have to think about it, not only me, my peers, my board, my reviewers have to think about what would a reader in Beijing or in Oslo or in Canberra say about your paper. Or if it's arts-based, what would the science guy say about your paper? So the basic idea is to be a place of conversation between the different disciplines and places of thinking about curriculum. So this is not that your paper has to be international and cross-disciplinary. So it can be your stuff, of course, but it has to be done in a way which is accessible for people not familiar. And now, coming from Vienna and being just one day here, I can allow myself to be a little bit impolite. It's especially American authors which have a tradition for ignoring that not everybody is grown up in the US. So they use expressions.
I'm sorry.
Deeply sorry, but they use expressions, descriptions, references, which are not automatically understandable for non-Americans or people not used to US kind of debates. Also, okay, I've been around here in the US for 25 years now, so I don't have so many problems with that. But this is really important, and the same goes for the cross-disciplinary thing. Think about why should that be of importance for other people in the field? So, because if it's too specified, to focus on but one area, there's simply a risk that our readership wouldn't read it, because they expect this kind of cross-disciplinary stuff which is kind of accessible for people from different walks of curriculum, from different cultures, from different languages. Oh yeah, second thing, most of our readers are like me, non-native speakers. So even that you should have in mind when writing papers. Well, we have a wonderful editorial office. It's an Australian lady she has a PhD in creative writing. So she does quite a lot to help people to tune the papers to our readership, because that's not easy. I know how difficult it was for me to write my first papers in English, and there's a huge distance between German or Norwegian and Danish, my prime languages, and English, of course. So much about just the general background. There were quite a few questions about online. We are a kind of traditional journal, published by Teller and Francis now for a couple of years. There is still a hard copy available, but nobody wants to have it anymore. Basically, we are an online journal like most journals nowadays, and we are accessible in almost all American and UK-based universities. So this shouldn't be a problem. Our archive is pretty good developed, so even papers from 40 years ago you can access online. Right now we are in a situation that Routledge has a free-for-all month, so you can right now download any paper of Routledge journals, even if you normally don't have access to the journal. And we have a very liberal policy when it comes to the question of reusing stuff. So as well, after 1 or 2 years, nobody complains if it's used, for example, in a reader or whatever. So we are not of that kind that if you once published with us, we will own it forever and you will never reuse the material. No, we try to be quite open. Within the limits, you can be open of going as being with such a publisher who has, of course, some economical interest in us not being too kind. So, but it normally works. We never had problems if people had a reason to reuse stuff or republish it on a different language or whatever. We could do that. It's not very difficult with Taylor and Francis. They're really nice people when it comes to that. So what more should you know? I believe, well, let's just take an example. As myself, I come from comparative curriculum research, right? So my main work is in the field of how different school systems, teachers, students in different cultures react to structural or fundamental changes in the system of schooling, like accountability, right? And what I wonder and what I feel is a central issue for you too probably is what happens to fields like art, creativity, all this kind of non-STEM, non-language training issues right now all across the world. It's not just an American or US phenomenon. It happens all across the world. So there is a process going on marginalizing most of the curriculum in a way which will be devastating for years to come, for generations to come, if we can't manage to stop that process. So we have discussions on that in my home country, Austria, because we're just introducing the nonsense you have had for some 30 years, testing here, testing there, testing everywhere. And we feel already in the everyday of schooling the huge impact it has on, for example, doing drama in schools, having time for doing cross-subject stuff, doing performance stuff, doing field stuff, and so on. So I feel it's important in this discourse that all voices, history, arts, we have lots of science and math education too, of course, but that all voices are heard. And we get a joint discussion about what it means. We have on German this wonderful expression of Bildung, which you can't translate to a new language. Bildung means the complete whole development of a person, in all respects, all sides. And what happens to Bildung in this process? What happens to the fundamental, to the development of children if they don't get access anymore to so many important areas of knowledge, so many important areas of experience, so many ways of being and ways of seeing, which simply get lost. So we try right now to invite people from all over the field, from all around the world and from different subjects, to go into that issue. And we had a period of about 10 years, people from curriculum theorizing will probably agree, well, we've got a kind of feeling that the curriculum field as such got marginalized and kind of not disappearing, but disintegrating. But I experience now for 1, 2, 3 years, the last 2, 3 years, that this is changing again. You have this movement towards national curriculum guidelines. You have these movements to reformulate what schooling is about. You have new fundamental work in fields like theory of schooling and theory of the curriculum. So I feel we are on right in the middle of something is going on, something is changing fundamentally. I can't tell you what comes out of that. I don't know yet. But I feel arts has always been very important, very cutting edge in developments in the history of curriculum. So hey, come on, try to be there again and try to get involved beyond your own field. As in a way, using arts-based, using your way of doing research, but addressing, talking to, getting into a conversation with the others in the field of curriculum studies in a way that we can not unite, but develop a stronger voice in something which is really worrying me each and every day when I come to the States. I just spent this morning half an hour listening to a TV, Span TV, whatever it's called, on New Orleans schooling, and oh gosh, I'm happy that my grandson is not living here. Thanks. Questions? Yeah, there's no question. All the online, by the way, the online, we have some online mechanism. Normal decision time, first decision time is on average about 60 days. As we try to be very, as we are proud of being fast kid on the block, but it depends pretty much on your paper. If it's very complex and I need 3 or 4 different reviews and not all of these reviewers are right away available, it may take a little bit longer. But normally we try to be very speedy. The moment you're accepted, you get online, even if you're not yet in print. Print may take another year or so, depending on the paper flow and the issues. But you get online the moment the paper is finally accepted, and online first. So where it's also accessible. Our rejection rate is somewhat worse than with other journals, but this is also because of the international character of the journal. We get lots of papers from young scholars who did not have any reasonable education in how doing research or how to write a paper. So lots of. So we really